Glad to have the Republican frontrunner on the line. It's Donald Trump again. Hi, Donald. How are you?
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing well. Really glad to talk to you. It's been a pretty important week. You've been out there on the stump all over the country, especially focusing on New York. How does it feel to be actually running for elective office in your home state?
Well, it's an honor, and I'm glad to be back. And it's been, I've been all over the country, and we have a great country. We have a country, though, that's being abused by very, very incompetent politicians on trade deals and with the military and with everything else. But it's so great to be back in New York. We're doing really amazing. I've been all over upstate New York and all over Long Island, and the crowds have been incredible.
As you know, upstate New York is decidedly red. It's a conservative area of the state. Most people who don't live in New York don't understand the vast majority of the geography of New York is not New York City.
Right.
But most of the people live in New York City, and because it's so blue and so liberal, it generally swings the state that way. Are you surprised by how popular it turns out you are in upstate as well as where you're from in downstate?
I really see what's happening in New York, and I've understood it because I understand upstate very well. I have so many friends. I'm there all the time. I live in the state, so I understand it. And when you look at Albany and when you look at Rochester and you look at Rome, we have a Rome upstate, which is great.
Absolutely.
But it's just absolutely being decimated by the lack of jobs and the companies moving out, and so many companies are moving out of New York, and it's very, very sad when you see it. And these are great, great people. And they're fighting, they have their homes there, they have their families there, and they're fighting to stay. And they know I'm going to bring back jobs. I'm going to make great trade deals. I'm not going to let jobs go to Mexico. I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to stop it cold. And I'm the only one that knows how to, a guy like Cruz can't do that. He has no idea how to do that. Besides that, he's taken care of by the special interests. Same thing with Kasich. Kasich voted for NAFTA. NAFTA is the thing that destroyed New York State. So the upstate area of New York is just a total disaster. What the politicians have allowed to happen is very, very sad.
We've got Republican frontrunner Donald Trump for the Republican nomination this year, 2016, on the line, and we appreciate the time. When you talk about other parts of New York, it's funny. I was a television news anchor in Albany, Schenectady, Troy for 3 years.
Sure.
And in upstate New York, they just call it New York, and then they call New York City downstate. In New York City, they call upstate New York upstate. There really is a divide there. The people who are not in New York City feel disenfranchised. Are you feeling that they feel energized this time around, that they think they might actually have a horse in the race?
I think they really feel energized. I think it's an amazing thing. I go up, and the love in those rooms. I mean, I have these massive hangars, airport hangars,
right,
and they're packed, and the love is incredible. They really feel they finally have somebody, which is me, that's going to fight for them. And I'm not only going to fight for them, I'm going to win for them. We're going to win. It's so easy. I mean, what's happening is incredible. Our companies move. They move to a place like Mexico. They're moving to Mexico left and right. I've never seen anything like it. Then they build their product. They send it in tax-free, no problem. We lose all the jobs. They make all the money in Mexico, and they hire Mexican employees. The whole thing is just outrageous. And, when I was up in upstate, and I'm going up today, I'm going up, I'll be up there a lot.
Right.
But when I was up there yesterday, I saw so many empty factories, empty buildings. I mean, people have just left. These companies have just left. And we're going to turn it around. We're going to turn it around fast. It's just we're not going to allow it to happen, and we're going to get the companies. We're going to get companies to come back.
Well, we've got 95 delegates available in New York, and it's a proportional state unless you get 50% or more.
Right.
How confident are you that you'll get more than 50%? And are you wary of the ground game now after what happened in Colorado, that some delegates can be siphoned off if you're not careful?
Well, the whole thing is, even New York is unfair, because when you think of it, Joe, if I got 60%, I could still lose delegates, and the other guys could get 19%. And,
right,
Kasich is not doing very well here, and, he can't do well here because he voted for NAFTA. And so he's not doing great, and Cruz is doing terribly. Cruz is in third place. He's absolutely crashing. And, you see it, but they can still get delegates even though they get very few votes. So, it's not a perfect system, but I think we'll do really well in New York.
All right. I want to talk about, you brought up jobs leaving and going to Mexico. And again, it's the Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump. Always a pleasure to have you on, and I appreciate you taking the time. You brought up jobs leaving. I want to talk to you about the economy, because as a businessman, I think this is probably why people started really paying attention to your campaign early on. That, and on top of the fact that we all knew you, and you're a famous person and you're very successful. But having said that, The business angle of it is probably going to be make or break for you and your campaign because you employ thousands of people now,
Right.
and we're seeing jobs leave. Generally speaking, going to Mexico or China or Japan. I want to talk about Indiana specifically.
Right.
In Indiana, you had an all-American company, Carrier Air Conditioning, and I don't know if you've seen this viral video, but there's a video out there where the company very coldly announces to over 1,000 employees, and just to let you know, we're going to open a plant in Mexico, in Monterrey. Any questions? It was just so sterile, Donald, and as I'm watching it, knowing that my father was blue-collar, and so many millions of people in previous generations were blue-collar, and these jobs are just going to up and leave. Really good jobs. What do you do to stop that?
Well, I talk about Carrier all the time. I thought it was disgusting, and I watched, and it's in Indiana, and they're leaving, and they had 1,400 to be exact employees. And the way it is, probably an upper mid-level management guy just said, "Well, we're moving to," this is after years and years, and these employees
Right.
were there for 30 years, some of them, and the way he did it so coldly, I thought it was terrible. I did see the video, and I talk about it all the time. So Carrier is leaving Indiana, and they're going to move to Mexico, and they're going to make their air conditioners, and they're going to sell their units into the United States through our currently very weak border, and there's not going to be any tax. And I will change it. I am going to tax them 35% on every unit that they make in Mexico, and if they want to sell units into the United States, they're going to pay a tax. And you know what's going to happen? They won't leave Indiana if that happens. Believe me, they won't leave. And nobody else talks like that. We talked, Joe, about free trade, and free trade's fine. I believe in free trade, but these other countries are just ripping us off. We have a trade deficit with Mexico of $58 billion a year. We have all the power. We're going to build the wall, by the way. We're going to have a strong border. But why should Carrier be allowed to leave Indiana, which is a great place? I mean, it's a phenomenal. I have so many friends here. Why should they be allowed to leave Indiana, go to Mexico, make units, get certain advantages, and just sell them into the United States, and all those employees are lost? Where does the United States benefit from that? There is no benefit.
Well, and at the same time, when Carrier builds the air conditioning units and they ship them back here without a tax or a tariff or something to even the playing field, they're going to charge the same amount they're charging now and make much more profit, and you've got 1,400 people out of work.
Hey, Joe, when I tell Carrier that, guess what, folks, meaning myself, I'd actually like to do it myself. I know it's not very presidential, but I'd like to do it myself because it's so easy. When I tell the head of Carrier, congratulations, you're going to pay a 35% tax, if they haven't started building that plant, they're going to be staying in Indiana, believe me.
And the argument on the other side, again, it's Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. We're always honored to have him on the program. The argument from the other side, those who are running against you, and from Democrats as well, is going to be, well, if you do that, the price of an air conditioning unit is going to be untenable. People in America can't afford it. How dare you? You're taxing the poor. You're a horrible person. How do you respond to somebody who reacts that way?
Well, first of all, in this case, it's going to be the same price. But more importantly, even if it were somewhat more, we're going to have jobs. Okay?
Right.
So we're going to have jobs. So maybe it would be a little bit more, but we're going to have jobs. Like I want Apple to make their equipment, to make their computers and all of their items. I want them to make them here. I don't want them to make them in China. So somebody would say, oh, they're going to cost more. That's right. But we're going to have a lot more jobs. That's going to offset it.
It's Donald Trump, Republican frontrunner. Of course, you all know who he is, and you're doing incredibly in New York. That primary happens Tuesday. You're confident about that. You've got many more primaries on April 26th. They're talking about Pennsylvania and Maryland and Delaware and Connecticut. That's a part of the country where you should feel pretty comfortable, are you?
I am, and I'm very comfortable in Indiana. I have a lot of friends in Indiana. I know you have a lot of shows in Indiana.
I
You're
do.
very, very well represented there. So I hope the folks in Indiana remember that I'm the one that has been talking about Carrier for the last 4 months since they announced this catastrophe, and nobody else talks about them. I talk about them, and no politician's going to do what I do because they don't even understand how to stop the problem, and I do.
To put a bow on that, though, the 35% tax, I think, would certainly incentivize companies to think twice before getting up and leaving. But don't you also, in accordance with that, have to change the corporate tax in our country now? 35 to 40% is nuts.
That's right. You know what I've done is I've reduced taxes tremendously for the middle class and for companies because we are the highest tax nation in the land, anywhere in the world. Okay, by the highest tax, corporate taxes. income taxes, you add them up. I mean, there's nobody that pays taxes like people from our country. And by the way, then we waste the money. You know, we the waste and the fraud and the abuse, and we just waste it. We throw it out the window. Whatever. You know, we've spent now $4 trillion in the Middle East. Could have rebuilt our country. We need new infrastructure. We need bridges. We need roads. We need hospitals. We need airports. I mean, we're like a third world country. So what is going to happen, and what very important is, and you've probably seen my tax proposal or policy, and it's all there. It's the biggest tax increase by far of anybody. The middle class is so well taken care of. A total simplification. You don't need H&R Block anymore.
Right.
Total simplification. Much lower rates. And for companies, too, much lower rates, because the companies are being forced to leave our country.
It's Donald Trump, the Republican frontrunner. Always a pleasure to have the time. The unemployment rate is a fraud. It's not really 5-point-something% because of the workforce participation.
Totally
you know this.
Correct,
95 million Americans are either under or unemployed, but they're not counted because they're not even looking for jobs anymore. The real unemployment rate is about 13-14%. Minority unemployment rate is 15 to 20% in this country. What can you do immediately hitting the ground running should you become the president to start turning that around? Is it really about keeping companies here, or is it more than that?
Well, it's keeping companies here. First of all, somebody has to speak to these companies. When the company says they're leaving, we're going to go talk to these companies, say, you're not going to leave so fast, because if you leave and go to another country, in particular Mexico, because they're taking so much of our business, but if you want to do that, you're going to have a problem. And the power we have is the power of taxation, okay? In other words, you're going to make product and you're going to tax it coming in. We will keep our jobs here. We'll build on it, and we'll make it an advantage to be staying in the United States as opposed to a disadvantage, which it is right now. That's why everybody's leaving.
As jobs are leaving, you've got idiots in California and the governor, unfortunately, of New York signing legislation that $15 an hour is going to be the minimum wage. As that happens, and as employees are cheering for it, they're being replaced by kiosks. People are losing their jobs because of Obamacare. They're losing their jobs because of this minimum wage of $15 an hour, and they're all cheering it like a bunch of lemmings. Are you for a minimum wage
Joe,
that would be that high, or is that as crazy as I think it is corporate-wise?
Well, let me just tell you what we're going to do. We're going to bring so many jobs back that the minimum wage, even at the higher number, will be not such a good number. Okay, people are going to make more than that.
Right.
That's not a lot either, in all fairness. But we're going to bring jobs back so much and so many that the minimum wage will hopefully be a figure that people won't want to think about. I want to bring jobs back. I want to get the economy going. Our economy is stagnant. You know, you're one of the few people that understood that the employment rate of 5% is a total fictitious number.
Right.
The real number, you have a business instinct, which is interesting because most of the so-called radio folks don't. They really don't. They don't have a clue. But you really do have. It's amazing. But what happens is the real number is probably 20 or 25%,
right.
The real number.
Right.
That was a number devised years ago to make the politicians look good. But when you stop looking for a job, you are essentially, you quit. You just can't do it. You're looking for 6 months, you can't do it anymore. They take you off that number. So you have millions of people that can't find a job, they quit looking, and we think we have a 5% unemployment rate. It's totally false. It's into the 20s at least.
You hired a guy this week who is an expert when it comes to the ground game, when it comes to delegates, when it comes to how this thing is managed. Paul Manafort. He's going to help out a lot. He's got decades and decades of a track record. At what point, because he's going to focus on that now, he's going to focus on the primaries and how the delegates actually work in the different districts.
He is, but it's a rigged system, and like a place like Colorado, I'm self-funding my campaign,
right.
So I don't get all this money that all these guys have from all the special interests
right.
that control them. So I'm self-funding my campaign. When I self-fund, I don't want to send people to Colorado for 3 months in advance to try and wine and dine all these people that you're not going to get anyway because they're all controlled by the bosses in the party. Or even Wyoming, where you send them to Wyoming months and months ahead of schedule, and you try and get a few delegates, and maybe you'll get a couple by wining and dining. It costs a fortune because I'm spending my own money. As somebody that spends my money, I don't want to do that.
Right.
So, but we're doing really well. I think we're going to win the system anyway. A lot of people say go independent, and I'll tell you what, if I don't win, you're going to have millions of people that aren't going to vote. That I can tell you.
No, that's probably true. I mean, you're seeing an energized electorate like we haven't seen for a very long time. I've only got two quick more questions. I brought up Manafort because he's going to focus on the ground game. He's going to focus on the states. At what point do you, the candidate, and the people closest to you, your advisors, start focusing on a Bernie Sanders or a Hillary Clinton? Is it time yet, or can't you that's going to have to wait until after July?
Well, very soon, but I want to win first. I have Cruz, Lion Ted Cruz, and I have the other one who voted for NAFTA, by the way. Kasich voted for NAFTA.
Why is he still in, Donald? Do you have any idea?
Well, because he's a stubborn guy. He just doesn't want to get out. You have other candidates that were doing better, and they left, okay?
Well, Rubio still has more delegates than he has.
That's sort of an amazing thing, isn't it?
It is.
But actually now, Kasich is going to be in second place because he's beating Cruz. Nobody wants to vote for Cruz. The votes that Cruz gets has to be done the way they're doing, through the bosses. Because I'm getting the votes. I'm getting the votes. I have millions of more votes than Cruz has. So the whole thing it's a whole rigged system, but I still think I'll be the winner. And, again, I'm leading by a lot. I want to close it out, and then I'll focus on Hillary.
It's Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. One last question, and I appreciate you. I told my listeners yesterday that I would have you on again today. And many people who are not for Trump, many people who don't get it, many people who are skeptical, they always ask this question: Why is he doing this? Isn't he doing it to help Hillary Clinton? And my response to them is, if he wanted to help the Democrats, he would run as a Democrat because he would win easily. The question that they have, though, is what was it? Because they think that you had Democratic leanings before. I understand what it's like to be a Republican from New York, so I get where you've always come from. But they think that you were first left-leaning, and suddenly he's made this change. Was there something that happened that told you when you decided you would run, that you wouldn't be independent, that you would definitely be a Republican? Was there something that deep inside landed on your soul that you said, I'm a Republican and here's why? I guess that's the question. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Sure. It's a great question. Numerous things. I mean, there are numerous things. And, I happen to be a very conservative person, but they say I'm not conservative on trade, but I'm actually much more conservative than the so-called conservatives because I believe, that's something where they want free trade. But we can't have free trade because we don't have the negotiators or the leadership. You need great leadership, great negotiators to have free trade. We don't have that. So we have to be smart, and we can't let, all of our jobs leave our country. And you have to see upstate New York and take a look at Cary and Indiana. I mean, what happens is just something that shouldn't be allowed to happen, and we can stop it so easy. But that would mean you're not as conservative as you're supposed to be because it's supposed to be totally free trade. You look at what China is doing to us. China is just eating our lunch. We have a trade deficit with China, $500 billion a year. So they say I'm not conservative on trade, but I'm more conservative than they are. But it's called smart trade. Maybe not free trade, but it's called smart trade for our country. So, there are many other things. One other thing that if you're in Manhattan, there's almost no such thing as a Republican.
Right, I know. It's a dirty word.
Yeah, whoever wins the Democratic primary becomes the position. A lot of times Republicans don't even run because it's like 95% to 5%. So, and I happen to be a Manhattan person, so that's it. But no, I'm very much a Republican. I will beat Hillary. The one person she doesn't want to run against is me. I will tell you that right now, and you know that. And, she got a little glimpse of it 2 months ago when she made a statement, and she wished she didn't make that statement. But I don't want to focus on her. I have to beat Cruz, and I have to beat Kasich.
I said last question, but you brought this up, and this is the last question. Should you become the nominee, can you win New York? Can a Republican win New York for the first time in 35 years?
I'm the only one that can win New York, and I think I can. And you see the kind of polls I have against these other two guys.
Right.
I think we can win New York. And if I win New York, because of how big it is, we win the election, because that makes up for many, many states. And whereas the other guys can't win New York, and if they lose any one of 6 or 7 or 8 states, the Republicans, it's much tougher for the Republicans to win. Much, much tougher. It's a much tougher road. But if I win New York, it makes that road very easy.
We always appreciate the time. We hope to speak again. It's Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. Donald, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
We will make America great again.